This example is very close to my home here. So behind me you see the buildings of the Quad, which is the main dorm for freshmen at the University of Pennsylvania. And so my students are very familiar with this setting, and I'd like to bring you into this setting. So here's the Quad, and you can see there's a little student there walking off to my class. And students are very much aware of the cost of coming to the University of Pennsylvania. It's not a cheap endeavor. So let's think, how much does it really cost to come to Penn? So I always have to update my slides here every year, because every year the tuition cost goes up. So every year I have to update my little PowerPoint presentation. So let's do it here together. Let's go onto the Penn website and we'll see how much is tuition at Penn this year. So let's go and check it out. So you can actually find this out by going to the Penn website, and they have a page there called Undergraduate Tuition and Fees, and it'll tell you exactly how much it costs to come to Penn. So okay, let me scroll down a little bit. And we can see we have the tuition, which is $39,000 plus a little bit of change. There's the general fee of $3,646. There's a technology fee. There's a recreation fee. That's so you can use our wonderful gym. And you get a total tuition and fees of $43,738, which is a whopping amount of money. And my question to you is this the cost of coming to Penn? If we were talking about the economic cost of coming to Penn, would you think of $43,738? And the answer is probably not, because you have to take into account the best foregone alternative. And the best foregone alternative is what you could have done with your time while you were here at Penn. So we said that the monetary cost of coming to Penn is $43,738, but that isn't the true economic cost. The true economic cost has to include both the dollars that we're spending by coming to the University of Pennsylvania and also the opportunity cost of the students' time, because students who come to Penn could have done something else. And so when we try to calculate the economic cost, we should be including both the dollars spent and the time spent. So this is really quite a difficult thing to do. So theoretically, we understand that every action implies an opportunity cost, and we know that we have to take into account the time that they could have spent doing something else, but how are we going to go ahead and measure this? So one way we could measure this is by trying to think about their foregone wages. How much money would the students be making if they went out there and got a job? So I'm recording this during a period where the United States is finally coming out of a recession. So hopefully my students, if they weren't at Penn, would actually be able to go out there and get a job. But let's assume that they did get a job. What would their earnings be? And it's not a very easy thing to come up with. So one way maybe I could come up with this estimate is by asking students sort of maybe what job they had over the summer. And I could extrapolate from the job that they had over the summer to their earnings if they worked all year round. Sometimes this would make sense if it's the type of job that would continue for a whole year. Sometimes it doesn't make sense because you work in the summer as a camp counselor. That's not the type of job that you can do all year round. So we have technical issues with that. Another way I might go about it is I might actually survey my students as to, what would they do if they weren't at Penn? What type of job would they try to apply to? And then I would try and get the data for that particular job. I decided to go about this in a little bit of a different way. I decided to look at data that the government actually collects. So the government collects data through the Labor Bureau and the Census Bureau. They collect data on people's income. And one survey that's very helpful is called the Current Population Survey. That is, these are data that are collected every March. And what the government does in this particular March supplement to the Current Population Survey is that it asks participants not only about their work status, are they working, are they not working, it also asks them about their income, it also asks them how many hours they work a week, but it also asks for demographic information. So it collects information about the age of the person who's answering the survey, the gender of the person answering the survey, and also about their educational attainment. And that's going to be important here. So it asks them whether or not the student has already graduated from high school, have they graduated from college, so what is the highest degree that they've achieved. And you can look at this data. You can actually, there are two ways you can look at this data. You can either look at a table that sort of gives you a lot of data in sort of different categories. Or if you want, you can actually pull up the raw data and do analysis on the raw data. And what I decided to do was to pull up the raw data and do analysis on that. So taking the raw data from the March supplement of the Current Population Survey, I decided to restrict the sample to people who answered the survey and are similar to the students who come to the University of Pennsylvania. So what do I mean by that? First of all, I wanted to look at young people. We know that incomes increase with experience, and experience is correlated with age. So I don't want to look at older people, I want to look at younger people. So I restricted the sample to people between the ages of 18 and 24. The other thing that I wanted to do is to restrict the sample to people who have the same educational attainment as my students do. And my students are mostly freshmen. This is an intro class, so these are mostly freshmen coming into Penn for the first year. And that means that they've completed high school, but they have no further degree. So the highest degree they've achieved is a high school degree, and they don't have any college experience. So I restricted my sample to that category as well. So these are young people, ages 18 to 26, who have a high school degree, but no more than a high school degree. And then I had to decide, out of this sample, what is the right measure to use? Should I use the average salary for this population? Well, I have to restrict it to people who are actually working, right? So a lot of people between the ages of 18 and 26 aren't even working. So I decided, okay, I'll restrict it to people who are working. So I'll only look at people between 18 and 26 who have a high school degree who are actually working. And specifically, I restricted it to people who are working full-time, year-round, which is defined as 35 hours or more a week and more than, let's say, 40 weeks a year. So this is the population that I want to look at. And out of this population, okay, so now I'm looking at only people who are working full-time year-round, young people, people with a high school degree, but no more than a high school degree. I still have quite a large sample to look at. What is the right measure for their potential earnings of my students? Should I look at the average earnings within this group? And I always pose this to my students, and my students are, I think, very modest because they tend to say, yes, take the average income. And then I have to remind my students that is really not a good reflection of their ability because they're not average, and you're not average either, right? We are all more than average. If we were average, we wouldn't be here thinking about economics. So we are all above average, and given that we're above average, I shouldn't take the average wages, right? I should take something else. With my students, I've decided to take the 90th percentile, and you might be chuckling to yourself and saying, you know, that's ridiculous. Your students aren't the 90th percentile. They're only the 75th percentile. I have to tell you, I always have a student sitting there in the audience, and I know that they're thinking that they're actually the 99th percentile. But whatever it is, I decided to take the 90th percentile. And doing that, I got the following. I got an estimate of the foregone wages of about $40,000. Now, you can argue with me about the details, and you're welcome to do this, to argue about the details. But the main point is that the opportunity cost of their time is large and significant. And in terms of thinking about the true cost of coming to the University of Pennsylvania, of being a student, ignoring the opportunity cost of time is really ridiculous, because you're basically throwing away half of the true cost of coming to Penn. The total economic cost is over $80,000. Half of that is the cost of time, and half of that is the cost of fees and tuition. So now I'd like you to do the following thought before we go on to the next case. I'd like you to think about taking this Coursera course and apply this concept of the opportunity cost of time to taking this course. How much are you paying in dollars versus how much are you paying in terms of the opportunity cost of your time? And realize that that together is the total economics cost of taking this Coursera course. So try and figure out in dollars what that is. And when you're ready, we can go back to the next example.